I trust you're having a good day. I trust that you are ready to once again go to this wonderful letter, 2 Timothy, as we call it today. Again, this is the ending of a letter. It's kind of got a crescendo feel to it. We've been here for several weeks of New Testament letters. This one always just speaks to me. I know it has spoke to you because this is the last letter of Paul, written again from that Mamertine prison. He's in great duress. He is in a lot of pain, and yet his wording is all about passing on the baton to the next guy. You know, when you study Paul's life and you study about the lives that he affected and positively, and those who became his students, those who became those loyal disciples, none stands out any taller than Timothy. We have reference to Mark as well in this letter, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But I want you to, we won't reread verses 1 through 5. You know, this is where we spent some time. But I do want to reference that in that part of that letter, he's reminding Timothy, this pastor, that people don't always listen well. And they hear, but they don't listen. And he's reminding him of that. And he said, actually, they'll become foolish. And again, the reference to the latter times. So we have that inspiration to claim that he's had us in mind. The Holy Spirit was directing him to write to us with language that once you hear it, it stays with you. And again, so much of the scripture I memorized out of a King James Bible. So sometimes I prefer that because it's what's comfortable. At the same time, it's just the verbiage of it that you don't want to change it to something else. And this is one of them passages where he said, people will heap unto themselves teachers with itching ears. And I like that language. And sure enough, I mean, don't we see them heaping them up? Let's just keep finding. If we keep finding these people who will tell me what I want to hear, that proves that I'm right. No, not necessarily. Because you're still doing it with an agenda. And that is, my ears are itching, and I don't like that preacher over here telling me the truth. He's not scratching my itch the way I want him to do it. I want him to tell me the way I want it. It's like, oh, that dog of my wife's, her dog, he likes me to do certain things for him. And one is when he will actually lie down next to me as I'm in a seated position on the couch. He wants me to grab them ears, and boy, they just turns every which way. And I can just see the visual of this. Oh, tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what I want to hear. They even get howling, don't they? Let's go to verses 6 through 8 now as we read together. Because you can now hear the ending of this message. For I am already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure has come. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Henceforth, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing. So, oh man, you know, this is just that incredible passage that you never get tired of reading. You never get tired of hearing it. You never get tired of examining it. This is that passage that I have used multiple times in a memorial service or a funeral service, but I've also used it, of course, in preaching to inspire the troops. And here is this man who has not given up, but has given in to destiny. He's accepting the fact. This is a man who's been beaten, left for dead, shipwrecked. This is a man who's been abused. This is a man that's been persecuted. This is a man that's been through a lot of stuff you and I trust, will never have to experience. This is a man that has been called DOA, dead on arrival, multiple times, and yet he survived the experiences. But this time he knows different. And yet it's his attitude about it that is just striking. And so what you hear him doing here is he's, in a soldier's expression, he's laying down his arms willingly so that another soldier, younger, freshly trained, can pick up those same arms and go to battle. Paul is saying, I have been in many a theater of operation. I have been in many a strategic battlefield. I have been in situations that I would have never dreamed of being in. I have been in so many different cultures that I've had to learn how to speak to them. I become all things to all men, where by all means some can be saved. And so he gives us these vivid pictures. The first is he talks about a sacrifice. And here I have in my hand a bottle of water. For him, he wouldn't have had, of course, a plastic bottle of water, but he would have had a cup. And I'm not going to pour this water out, but you can get the feel of it. He said, I have been poured out as a sacrifice. And so he would take a cup of water, a cup of juice, a cup of wine, whatever, and pour it upon the ground until every last drop had come out. And that's called a libation. To this day, it's a libation. And it is a drink offering. And it is saying, I've exhausted everything in me. This is my life. This is my body. This is the vessel that I am. And every last drop I'm offering. I'm presenting my body as a sacrifice. You know, it's his attitude here. He is not seeing that he's about to be have his life taken away from him. He doesn't see himself as getting ready to be executed. No, he is willingly laying down his life, and not just that, I'm done. It is, no, this is it. The contents of this cup has been poured out, and now there's not much left, and I'm just taking the last of it and pouring it upon the ground. And so the whole symbol of that is, why wouldn't you drink that? If you get that last sip, maybe you can survive another day, maybe another week, maybe another hour. No, this is it. And I'm doing intention because as I pour it upon the ground, it's serving me no purpose whatsoever. I can't go back and lap it up. I can't change my thoughts. This is it. It's poured out. It's done. What an incredible, vivid picture that he's given us. And then he talks about his departure. So again, notice what he has said here. I'm already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure has come. And that word departure again, we kind of see it as boarding a plane or whatever. I got to get to the airport at such and such a time. There is a beautiful, vivid picture here that we would miss without just a little bit of study. And the time of my departure is at hand, and it is literally the unyoking of an animal that has been serving and toiling in the elements, in the hot sun, in the rain, in the ground that has that's virgin land that has never been broken, and just the hard work that not only the farmer is having to go through, it is also the animal that, either is being whipped or being driven or coming to a point of just great exhaustion of strength. He said, my departure is at hand. In other words, the release, the unyoking, can you imagine that old ox just rolling its head back and forth? Whew, I'm glad to get that thing off. It's like doing physical work or a physical workout, whatever the case. And you're like, I knew I needed to do this. My muscles have responded well. My blood pressure, all the different things. It's been good for my body to do this workout. But I'm done, and I'm ready to take a shower. I am ready to get in comfortable clothes. I am ready just to relax for the rest of the day. And that's exactly the picture of the departure, of the relief that comes. It also is a word that's used when you're loosening the ropes of a tent. For it is time, of course, to strike camp. It is time to move somewhere else. And so the first thing you do is release the tension of those ropes so that now the tent can be folded properly and get ready to move to the next destination, whether it's just around the corner or if it's a full day's journey or multiple day, whatever the case, it's my departure is at hand. It is also a word used for the loosening of the ropes of the mooring ropes of a ship that is getting ready now to go on its departure. So all these vivid pictures that Timothy surely was reading. Oh man, yeah, oh man. Have you ever thought about the emotions that Timothy would have had as he's reading this letter? Paul's gone. And he's awarded me to write to me of his final thoughts. He's putting that charge into me that I am to follow in the work that I've already begun and use the principles that he's given me to give the examples to inspire me. It wasn't, you're my protege, that you got to run the business after me and do it just like I did. No, it was a better training system than that. No, Timothy, you got to be who you are. You can't be me. But these are the guiding principles. I just love this passage. And then in these vivid pictures, then it's almost like a trilogy of final thought. And that's why the verse is broken down the way it is, and the punctuations that we have. So again, verse 6, for I'm already being poured out, it's happening as a drink offering, and the time of my departure, my unyoking, the release, the ropes are being loosened now, it's all coming. It has come. And then there's a period. And verse 7 tells us, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race, and I have kept the faith. So that trilogy of vivid pictures now, it's like, looking in somebody's home or apartment on the wall. We've seen the picture of the offering, the sacrifice, the libation. On this wall is another single picture of the departure. But on that other wall, it is that combination of pictures where it's actually one picture, but it's been spliced, and you got three different frames there. And it's like, oh, I like how they've done that. They've put separation between it. But when I stand back, I see the whole picture. And that's what he's done for us here. He said, I have fought a good fight. And so I'm leaving it all on the field. I'm done. I'm leaving the ring. I'm leaving the Coliseum. The contest is over. It's been a good season, but this is my final battle, my final sortie. It's it. I am just awaiting the departure now. I can sit back and I've got to say something to all of us that we can look at our own life. Not that we ever feel like we've paid enough dues to the grace that God's given us, but you want to feel some ownership in this thing. It's healthy. And I have fought a good fight. I've done what God's called me to do. I've done what I can do. And I'm reminded when I was reading this, when I was in Texas many years ago, and General Assembly of the Church of God at that particular time, Sheila and I went over to the Alamo, of course. And of course, they ask you to remain quiet as you're walking through that old mission building. Well, you got to realize that only a small portion exists today of what was there at that time in an open field, basically. And you had a compound there. You had people living there. You had life going on, children being taught in school, and you had an infirmary. And so it was in that infirmary area where, of the defenders, scores of them were killed in one cannon blast because they had already been injured and taken to the infirmary. And so one cannon blast blowing that building and imploding it upon those who had already been injured. So they've rebuilt it, of course, and outside the door to walk into what was the infirmary, I had some time to read, and there was a letter there from Jim Bowie's mother. And she was being informed that her son Jim had died at the Alamo in the 13 days of defending that, giving Sam Houston time. She was already proud of her son, obviously. But man, the words of this mother. Of course, Jim Bowie was known for his Bowie knife. And that's not where her mind went. She said, "I'm sure when you found his body that there were no bullet holes in his back." In other words, I know my son, he wasn't any coward. He fought till he couldn't fight anymore. And that is the expression that we have here. So he goes on, he said, "I have finished the race." And of course, being a runner like I've been, I've never done a marathon. I've done 10Ks. I've done 10 milers, but the marathon runner is another beast, and all the preparation that goes into it. And he said, "I have finished the race." And, that staying power. I could have quit along the way. There was plenty of people that told me I should have quit. There are other people, "Why do you keep doing this?" There are people, you just can't keep on. We need you here. Stay here. Don't do any more traveling. Can you imagine all the things that's been said to this man? And he said, "But I have finished my race." They didn't understand that I had a race. It wasn't their race. I appreciate their sentiment. I appreciate their concern, but this was my race, and it was a marathon. And I couldn't just stop at any other marker. I had to come to the end of that particular race, and I am there. Of all the stories that marathoners will talk about, they talk about, of course, the great race of yesteryear, one of the most decisive races in world history. It was actually a battle, and it was the Greeks against, of course, that the power at that time was the Persians, and the glory of Greece was at stake. Everything could be lost. The position of their stature, of renown, all the games that we have today originated out of Greece, and so now you have these other powers that have been replacing the glory of Greece, and so finally it came down to this great race, and it was all on the line. And of course, the paparazzi and the media of the day would have been saying, "There's no way the Greeks can win." Well, to make a long story short, the Greeks did win the race. But what was interesting is a particular soldier who had been watching the whole experience. He just knew this is our country. This is our position. This is our glory. We can't give this up. There has to be something inside. And to see that the runners had done their job, he wanted to do his job. And he himself would run all day, all night into the next day to run back to Athens to give the news, because there wasn't a text, there wasn't an email system. And he got to the magistrates. And history says that he got to them and said, "Rejoice, we have conquered," and died. Someone may say, well, that's a sad story. Not to that soldier. I too gave it all. That's the feeling of what we have here. And he comes back and he says, I have kept the faith. He actually was responding again to an oath that an athlete would take. The night before the games, these world-class athletes from around the world would all be gathered, and they would have to give their oath. I have trained a minimum of 10 months to represent my nation, to be here. And I give my word that I have not been involved nor will be involved in any trickery. My mission is to be trained to come here to win, to represent my nation. And if I am able to accomplish, no one will be able to point a finger toward me and say that I cheated. In a day of corruption like we know it today, isn't that a refreshing story? So what Paul was saying is, in this last trilogy of vivid pictures, I've already told you, my life's been a libation. That's finishing up. My departure, I've got my ticket. I'm ready to go. But I want you to know I have fought a good fight. I want you to know I've finished the race. And I want you to know I've kept the faith. In other words, I know I'm not going to leave here. I know I'm not going to be able to go back and run another leg of this race. It's over for me. I'm just waiting for my departure to actually happen. And then he goes into the crown. The crown, that's the crown of righteousness. Again, back in that day, these athletes would compete, would practice sometimes more than the 10 months to come to represent. And if they would win, they had one thing in mind, that laurel wreath that would be wrapped around their head. Yesteryear, playing church softball, I can remember as a young man, going over and seeing them trophies, first place, second place, third place. Back then, trophies were important, and we knew they were plastic, but hey, we want to take that trophy home. And to get in some of them big tournaments where that trophy for first place was 6 foot tall is crazy. But back then, it was exhilarating. And every team would walk by, we're going to take that home. We're going to take that. Well, only one team would. 29 of the teams would go home without that. And for these runners, they would do all this for a laurel wreath that would wither in hours, at best days. And they might try to hold on to it, but eventually it's just going to decay. Paul said, but the crown of righteousness will never fade away. He said, but it's not only to me. Timothy, there's one stored up for you. It's got your name on it. And everybody you preach to, everybody you shepherd, let them know that that righteous judge has got one for each one of us. Let's finish out the letter. We've read through verse 8. Verse 9. I'm going to read through verse 15. Do your best to come to me soon, for Demas, in love with this present world, has deserted me and gone to Thessalonica. Crescens has gone to Galatia, Titus to Dalmatia. Luke alone is with me. Get Mark and bring him with you, for he is very useful to me for ministry. Tychicus I have sent to Ephesus. And when you come, bring the cloak that I left with Carpus at Troas. Also the books, and above all, the parchments. Alexander the coppersmith, he did me great harm, and the Lord will repay him according to his deeds. Beware of him yourself, for he strongly opposed our message. So I want to stop there for just a moment. As we're closing out, you see these names, and again, just to highlight three. First, he mentions Demas. Well, Demas was listed 3 different times in New Testament letters. The first time was in Philippians, and he said, he is my fellow laborer. The second time was found in Colossians chapter 4, verse 44, and there's no commentary given. And the final time was this letter. What happened to the man? At one time, he was a fellow laborer, and now he has deserted me. He has fallen in love with this present world. We could surmise, we could guess. Did he backslide? Did he really have the goods to start off with? Was he just there because he had nothing else to do, or it looked like he could be popular? We'll never know in this life. All we know is Paul had confidence in him and appreciated the fact he was a fellow laborer. Paul didn't hand out those kind of statements very often. So he was convinced he was the real deal. But here he is. He's deserted me, and he's fallen in love with this present world. Was the pressure too much? Did he feel like he was next in line? Did he just give up thinking, Paul, they're going to kill him this time? I guess we've just been living an illusion. Whatever it was, he left. And then juxtaposed against Demas is Luke, the contrast. This faithful laborer who's remained faithful to the very end. This Gentile who had a career as a physician, but bonded with me and has served me even in this particular jail time. He's been there to get whatever I need. You see, Demas left me. Luke, you couldn't pay him to leave me. And then he mentions Mark. And Mark is in between them. Started off well, stumbled, but at the end, Paul is saying, bring him with you. He's useful to me. So even though Paul knew he'd run his race, he knew the end was near. He didn't know exactly when. He knew his departure was scheduled. So bring me the cloak. Bring me those parchments. We're reading one of those parchments. It wouldn't have been at that time. He was writing it at the time. But the previous things. And I don't think they would have been, the scripture itself, because he mentions that separate as well, the Tanakh, the Old Testament as we call it. So, bring them with you, bring him with you. So you see Mark, who was he just too young when he started out? When he had the first adversarial position against him, did it shake him up? Whatever the case, he recovered. So you see one who had it, who left it, one who never lost it once he got it, and one who had stumbled but recovered. What a great message to all of us. So they tell us that tradition says that Mark wound up taking the gospel to Egypt. Every once in a while, we'll hear news out of Egypt and talks about Christianity, and it talks about the Coptic, C-O-P-T-I-C, Coptic Christians that are there. And tradition says that Mark is the one that got the message to them. They're very strong people. We're going to finish out verses 16 through 22. At my first defense, no one came to stand by me, but all deserted me. May it not be charged against them. But the Lord stood by me and strengthened me so that through me the message might be fully proclaimed and all the Gentiles might hear it. So I was rescued from the lion's mouth. The Lord will rescue me from every evil deed and bring me safely into his heavenly kingdom. To him be glory forever and ever. Amen. Again, just to pause there, just to say, you don't hear a guy that's saying, I wish I had more time. Here's a man that doesn't feel like his life's being taken from him. No, the Lord is calling me.